What do you think makes this a very special course?
Well, I think the course has been put together with the idea that the way we move towards zero harm is we recognize that it's all about the quality of the decisions that we make as a business and as an individual within the business. And so the course focuses on helping managers make better decisions.
And in particular, what stands out as to why you've always told us this is world-class?
Well, the whole course is built around a model of a journey, and the journey model provides an image of how organizations mature, and that sort of maturity approach, that approach of thinking of improvement and moving towards an objective as a journey, is a world-class or a leading practice approach.
How would you best describe what we've got and we're offering Anglo in this SRMP product?
Yeah. I guess I'd call it a product because it's a lot of things. It's not just one thing. It's 4 levels of education and training and all of the resources that go with that. But the need was nicely identified by the team of people across Anglo. They thought about what they were trying to achieve. I was really excited when the team came up with a vision of making better decisions about safety, because it really focuses on saying, well, where do we make these decisions? How do we make them? How can we increase the likelihood that we're going to make better decisions? Which then led us to how we would design a course to do that and the concepts and the models that go within it.
And we have a tiered approach. I mean, how would you best describe education as opposed to training?
Well, you know, interesting you'd ask that question, because somebody in one of the courses today actually made a statement, an unsolicited statement of saying that, you know what this course does for me? It helps me understand all the other initiatives that are going on in health and safety across Anglo, because what it does is it gives me an understanding of the strategy and the principles that are behind trying to manage risk. So when things like the fatal risk protocols and other initiatives come in, I can fit them into my thinking.
Yes.
And that is education.
Yeah.
That's talking to people about setting foundations and processes that allow them to deal with change and new things. Within the product, I think there's some particularly exciting bits too. You can almost disassemble it and take parts out of it that are particularly important to what Anglo is trying to do, but are particularly great innovations. We've developed, we meaning the Anglo group, has developed a 4-layer model for looking at risk assessment for 4 different objectives in a site or an operation. Now that's based on leading practice work within the minerals industry.
Well, it seems to fit perfectly any operation, or in fact you could even apply it to any discipline, where at the top layer you're actually looking across the entire business and identifying the hazards, the printable hazards, and essentially quantifying the risks. At that next layer down, you're starting to look at project and change management. And then at the 3rd layer down, you're starting to actually look at how people do jobs, tasks.
Absolutely.
And finally, it provides a tool as well for people at the face, so to speak. So it actually addresses risk right through the business, from the very highest level to operators. I know we've gone and labelled this as the Anglo journey model, but certainly maturity models have been around a long time.
The maturity model actually just makes common sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It really, I mean, if you just think of your own life, there's stages of your life, there's books that have been written of how different stages of your life, even as an adult.
You mean you can't get to being an adult without first being a teenager?
You can't skip
you can't
being a teenager, or at least it isn't healthy if you do, that's for sure.
But what the next insight is that there's a tool that you've developed, or well, the team has developed, which once you know where you are, it's very easy to then reference, well, what do you need to do to go to the next step in those elements that you've created? Yeah,
the product or the course actually provides resources to the team to, once they know where they are, once they've used the compass and they found where they are in the map, to actually have a little guidebook that it isn't prescriptive. It doesn't suggest to anyone that's exactly what they should do to move forward, because the context is different, the issues are different across the sites, of course, but it stimulates people to think of ideas and ways to solve their problems. Yes.
And it's interesting how we've allowed, I think, a suite of tools to sort of emerge and bubble out as being the key tools, but we're not decreeing or sort of demanding that everybody use the same tools.
Yeah, and I think it'd be fair to say there's the road to risk management in the minerals industry is littered with those kinds of approaches, and that is that we think there's a silver bullet or a pill that, whether it be a risk assessment technique or something else, that if we just put it out there, it's going to change everything. Instead of really sitting back and educating people about what the options are and what options are for what alternatives, and letting them assemble things that not only make sense for their business but are actually owned because it's their development.
I think every student who's ever sat in one of your courses and classes has heard you say that if the only tool you've got is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And I guess what I really like about it is that you're giving them the hammer, but you're giving them the saw and the chisel and everything. You're giving them the full toolbox now.
Yeah, that's
exposing them to
that's
the
definitely
full
one of the dimensions that the product has, and that is that we're really trying to let them think of risk assessment and decision making. Decision making is something people do, and if they need a tool to help them with it, then there's lots of different tools. So we want people to be familiar with what the options are and understand that there actually are a lot of systematic, not difficult ways to just think better about safety.
The one thing that unifies everybody is that we're all passionate about making a change, particularly in the safety.
Yeah.
We all want to transform Anglo and the mining industry.
I think it's the timing in terms of where we are in terms of the evolution of the industry. This course also fits that timing perfectly, because we have a situation where we have several major global companies that have the same issues. They have the issues of safety and being seen to be operating safely. They have issues of global consistency. They have issues of significant risks and increasing risks because machinery is getting bigger, resources are changing, where they're mining is getting more difficult, so the challenges are getting greater to the mining industry. So the whole idea that we're creating, we have put together something that can help with managing safety in those hard decisions is attractive to just about any mining company you talk to these days.
I mean, certainly when you start the course, on day one, the very first exercise you got the participants to do is actually to talk about how they use risk management with their family in a home life. And you start to get people talking about care and respect with the family. And then it's just a very simple progression to saying, well, this is exactly how we should be doing it at work. Have you seen changes in thinking, the way people change their thinking just in the week of the course?
I think probably, John, you and I started using that as an exercise because we could see people who were perhaps models of managers and CEOs, as you mentioned, where caring was so much a part of the way they dealt with the people in their organization, that it was so overt, it was so obvious that their care and respect for people was a part of how they wanted their organization to be, that bringing it back to that right at the beginning and saying, let's talk about care and respect and make it very clear to you what that is by saying, who do you care for the most? You care for your family. And that comes from the experience, I think, of watching people over 20 years or 22 or 3 years that I've been in the mining industry actually mature and start to think differently about their people and then start to make better decisions because of that. We've certainly challenged the approach to educating people in such a large organization. We've had to find a way with so many people to deliver a consistent and quality course. One of the best ways adults learn is with anecdotal stories and experiences that have occurred in the mining industry. Some people might call them war stories, but you anchor the concepts, you anchor the learning in an experiential context, and people who have good mining experience and a good understanding of risk management put those two things together, and that's how we get the change.
Yeah.